The room erupted in applause. Not for me. For the man who had just fired me. After 31 years of building the company's core systems, the CEO's son stood in front of the board and proudly announced that it was time to eliminate legacy employees. Apparently, I was the first one on the list. I smiled, signed my termination papers, and stood to leave. Then I stopped at the door. Before I go, I asked, "Who's taking over safe mode protocol?" 20 executives looked at one another. Nobody answered. They thought I'd asked a meaningless question. Exactly 18 minutes later, every office the company owned went dark. Hook 2, highest suspense. I've learned something about billion-dollar companies. They don't usually collapse because hackers break in. Sometimes, they collapse because the one person who knows how to keep them alive gets shown the exit. The morning I was fired, they called me outdated. Old school. Legacy. The CEO's son even thanked me for my years of service before security escorted me toward the elevator. I never argued. I simply handed over my badge and asked who would be responsible for safe mode protocol. They laughed. I didn't, because I already knew something they were about to learn the hard way. The first time they called me Legacy, the room laughed. Not because it was funny, because they wanted me to hear it. I simply looked around the conference room, closed my notebook, and smiled. After 31 years with Blackridge Systems, I had learned something most people never do. The loudest people in the room usually understood the least. I joined Blackridge when it occupied 2 rented floors above a furniture warehouse. Back then we didn't have glass offices, executive lounges, or million-dollar investor presentations. We had mismatched desks, unreliable coffee, and a handful of engineers trying to build software that businesses could actually trust. Every major system the company relied on today had a piece of my handwriting somewhere behind it. The first authentication servers, the emergency recovery framework, the internal communication backbone. Most of the younger employees had no idea. To them, those systems had always existed, like electricity or gravity. I never corrected them. Good infrastructure isn't supposed to be noticed. It's supposed to work. Everything changed after the founder retired. Private investors arrived. Revenue tripled. The company hired hundreds of graduates with impressive resumes and even more impressive confidence. Then came Evan, the founder's son, 32 years old. MBA from a prestigious university. Perfect suits. Perfect speeches. Perfect confidence. He loved talking about innovation. He hated talking about history. Within 6 months, he introduced a phrase that spread through the company faster than any software update. Legacy thinking. Anything old became legacy. Experienced engineers became legacy. Existing processes became legacy. Even people became legacy. I noticed something else. Whenever a problem appeared that nobody could explain, the same legacy, employees quietly fixed it before morning. No announcements. No applause. Just another normal day. I kept documenting everything. Every system update. Every architectural decision. Every emergency procedure. People teased me for carrying a leather notebook everywhere. Everything's in the cloud now, one engineer joked. I smiled. The cloud still belongs to someone else's computer. He laughed. 3 months later, he asked to borrow my notes. The meeting happened on a Tuesday morning. Every department head filled the executive conference room. Large display screens glowed with colorful charts celebrating another record-breaking quarter. Evan stood confidently beside the presentation screen. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "today we begin the final phase of our modernization initiative." Slides changed. Departments disappeared. New organizational charts appeared. Then my name showed up. Michael Carter, Senior Systems Architect. Position eliminated. The room became strangely quiet. Evan looked directly at me. "Mike, your contributions are appreciated, but the company has evolved beyond maintaining legacy infrastructure. We need people focused on the future." A few uncomfortable smiles appeared around the table. Nobody spoke. 31 years. Reduced to a single slide. I slowly stood, picked up my notebook, placed my employee badge on the polished conference table. "I understand," I said calmly. Evan smiled, probably expecting an argument. Instead, I asked one simple question. "So, Who's taking ownership of safe mode protocol? Silence. Several executives looked at one another. One vice president frowned. Another checked his tablet. Finally, Evan chuckled. I'm sorry. The what? Safe mode protocol. I repeated. The emergency continuity framework. Blank expressions. Someone near the back whispered, I've never heard of it. Another executive shrugged. Evan folded his arms confidently. If it were important, he said, someone else would know about it. A few people laughed. Not loudly. Just enough. I nodded once. Fair enough. I picked up my coat, walked toward the door. No anger. No speeches. No dramatic farewell. Just quiet footsteps echoing through the hallway I'd walked for 3 decades. As the elevator doors closed, my phone vibrated. I didn't need to look. I already knew what was happening. Exactly 15 minutes after my access badge stopped working, every monitor inside Blackridge Systems turned bright red. The first alert reached my phone before I had even driven out of the parking garage. Critical systems status change detected. I didn't open it. I already knew what it meant. Safe mode protocol had activated exactly as it was designed to. Not because someone pressed a button. Not because I wanted revenge. Because the company had unknowingly met every condition that triggered it. 22 minutes later, my phone started ringing. The first call came from Human Resources. I ignored it. The second came from an unfamiliar executive number. Ignored again. By the 5th call, I pulled into a quiet coffee shop across town, ordered a black coffee, and finally opened the internal status dashboard I still had public access to. Every major service was marked in red. Customer authentication. Offline. Remote manufacturing synchronization. Suspended. Vendor integrations. Disconnected. International data replication. Paused. Even internal executive email had stopped functioning. Safe mode wasn't destroying the company. It was protecting it. Years earlier, after a ransomware attack nearly crippled one of our biggest clients, I had convinced the founder that modern systems needed one final layer of defense. A protocol that assumed everyone, even executives, could eventually make catastrophic mistakes. If enough critical risks appeared simultaneously, unauthorized architectural changes, unverified administrator transfers, missing ownership validation, then the company would automatically isolate every essential system before irreversible damage could spread. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't flashy. It was simply cautious. The founder had smiled after I finished explaining it. Hope we never need it. So do I. I'd replied. Apparently, today was that day. An hour later, financial news sites began reporting that Blackridge Systems was experiencing technical difficulties. Customers flooded support lines. Major clients demanded explanations. Investors started asking questions. Inside headquarters, panic replaced confidence. Later, I would learn exactly how those conversations unfolded. We're under attack. No signs of external intrusion. Restore the backup. It won't accept administrator credentials. Override the protocol. There isn't an override. What do you mean there isn't one? The documentation says manual authorization is required. Then authorize it. It won't accept anyone. Meeting after meeting produced the same result. The more they pushed, the tighter the system locked itself. Someone finally searched the engineering archives. Buried inside thousands of technical documents was a file nobody had opened in years. Safe Mode Protocol, Continuity Architecture version 1.0. Author, Michael Carter. My phone rang again. This time it wasn't another executive. It was Richard Hale, chairman of the board. I answered. Michael. His voice remained calm, but I could hear controlled urgency underneath. I assume you know what's happening. I had a feeling. We've had 3 consulting firms trying to reverse the shutdown. I figured. They can't. No. A long silence followed. Finally, he asked the question no one else had been willing to ask. Can you explain why? I looked through the cafe window at people walking their dogs as if it were any ordinary afternoon. Because they keep treating the symptoms. The protocol isn't responding to technical commands. It's responding to governance. What does that mean? It believes the company no longer has verified architectural ownership. Another silence. Longer this time. So, how do we restore it? You don't restore it. You prove the company is stable enough to trust itself again. Richard exhaled slowly. I don't think anyone in that building understands what you just said. I know. He hesitated before speaking again. Michael, I owe you an apology. You warned us. More than once. I found your reports this morning. He wasn't wrong. Over the last 4 years, I'd submitted recommendation after recommendation. Cross-training senior engineers. Updating succession documentation. Assigning multiple protocol custodians. Reviewing executive access. Every proposal had been marked for future consideration. Future never arrived. Innovation projects always seemed more exciting than maintenance. Until maintenance disappeared. Richard finally spoke again. I'd like you to come back. Not as an employee, as the person who understands the architecture better than anyone alive. I stayed quiet. Across the room, the television switched to breaking business news. Blackridge Systems stock had begun falling. Employees were gathering outside headquarters. Rumors spread faster than facts ever could. None of that gave me satisfaction. I'd spent 31 years helping build that company. Watching it struggle felt like watching your own house catch fire. Richard interrupted my thoughts. Michael, if you don't help us today, I honestly don't know what happens next. I took a slow sip of coffee. Then I answered. I'll come. Relief flooded his voice. Thank you. But, he stopped. There will be one condition. What is it? I won't touch a single keyboard until every member of the board is sitting in the same room. Silence. Then Richard quietly replied, I'll have them waiting. When I walked back into Blackridge headquarters, the atmosphere felt completely different. 24 hours earlier, security had escorted me toward the exit. Now, the chairman himself was waiting in the lobby. He extended his hand. Welcome back, Michael. I shook it. I'm not back. I'm just here to solve a problem. He nodded. I understand. The boardroom was full. Every director, every executive, even Evan. The confidence I'd seen the previous morning had disappeared. Dark circles surrounded his eyes. His expensive suit couldn't hide exhaustion. He pointed toward a laptop already waiting for me. Can you fix it? I didn't move. I said I'd help. I never said I'd start immediately. The room became silent. I looked around the table. For years, everyone here approved budgets for expansion. New offices. New products. New marketing campaigns. But every proposal involving continuity planning was delayed. I slid a thick binder across the conference table. My documentation. 31 years of it. Every recommendation was dated. Every warning had signatures showing exactly who had reviewed it. One director flipped through the pages. Another quietly removed his glasses. Richard spoke first. These recommendations go back 4 years. They do. You specifically requested multiple protocol custodians. Yes. You recommended executive training. Yes. You warned against concentrating architectural authority in undocumented systems. I did. The room fell quiet again. No one argued, because no one could. The evidence wasn't emotional. It was written, page after page, decision after decision. Finally, Richard looked toward Evan. Is there anything you'd like to say? For several seconds he stared at the table. Then, almost reluctantly, he spoke. I thought replacing experience with speed would make us stronger. He looked at me. I was wrong. It wasn't a dramatic apology, but it was honest. Richard stood. As chairman of the board, effective immediately, operational authority will be transferred to an interim leadership committee while governance procedures are reviewed. No shouting. No humiliation. Just accountability. Only then did I walk toward the waiting laptop. The recovery process took less than 40 minutes. Safe mode wasn't designed to trap a company forever. It was designed to force responsible leadership before restoring trust. One by one, the warning screens disappeared. Authentication returned. Manufacturing resumed. Customer portals came back online. Across the operations center, employees quietly applauded. Not because I'd performed a miracle, because the systems they'd taken for granted were working again. A week later, Richard offered me my old position back. along with a promotion. I thanked him, then declined. I've already built what I wanted to build. Instead, I accepted a consulting role. My job wasn't to write more code. It was to teach the next generation why every new innovation stands on an old foundation. A company can buy faster computers. It can hire brilliant graduates. It can redesign every office. But it cannot replace decades of earned judgment overnight. The day they called me legacy, they believed the past had become unnecessary. The day safe mode activated, they learned the future only survives because someone remembered how to protect it.